He is the proprietor of what I believe is the best burger in all of Russellville. He also spent his 18th birthday in a really interesting place. Jeremy Haymes is on the spotlight next. From the studios of Alathus Realty in beautiful downtown Russellville, we welcome you into the spotlight on this Thursday. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Drew Brent. If you're in the market to buy or sell your home, give us a call today. It's 479-968-5668 or cruise on over to RussellvilleLiving.com. One of our agents is always ready, willing, and able to serve you. Give us a call today, 479-968-5668 or cruise on over to RussellvilleLiving.com. Guest at this time is a friend of mine. I've only known him a couple of years. We met at Game for Change a few years ago, and since that time, he has been one of those guys who consistently tries to hate on the fact that I can't game, but he makes a mean burger. This is Jeremy Haymes. What's up, buddy?
Another day.
Another day.
Another day.
I remember a couple years ago, we were sitting in your apartment, and you had this idea. You said, I think I'm going to open my own restaurant. And I've been 17 years in the restaurant business, and I thought, oh no, oh no, oh dear friend, do you know what you're doing? But here we are 2 years later, and apparently you do. The Gunslingin Burger is hopping and bopping, my friend.
That it is. It's been a long time coming. I've been looking at opening my own restaurant for pretty much my entire life. So, I mean, actively in the past, before I opened up the restaurant, we're just over 1 year. About 3 years before that, I was actively looking at every location I could find. Everywhere from Little Rock, Fort Smith, Conway, Russellville, Clarksville, any location I could, just to try to open up a restaurant.
Was it something that you had set your mind to of saying, you know what, I really, really, really want to have a burger place?
Not necessarily. So for me, it was, I've had multiple different concepts, multiple different ideas on restaurants that I've wanted to open. And honestly, the burger idea was probably one of the last ideas I had. I've had, and of course, kind of throwing back and forth, trying to figure out which one I wanted to go with. And the reason I went with the burger was because my biggest thing is I wanted to get something that no one else had ever had. I wanted to create something no one had ever tasted. Some ideas way out there. And of course, burgers I felt like was kind of the easiest way to go. Get people to package something into a form that they know, to try something outside of the box.
And that's interesting because there are some burgers over at Gunslingin Burger that are out of the box for sure.
Very much so, yes.
Abby Balch was on this show a couple of days ago, and she asked me if I had tried the burger with the banana on it.
The tequila burger.
The tequila burger. And I have had a bite of it, and I enjoyed it. I had no idea that I would enjoy it because it's a banana
Yes.
on a burger.
Yes.
There's all kinds of different flavors that you have over there. First question, what's the most out there flavor you have? And second, what's the inspiration behind these?
Most out there burger I would have in flavor concept. That would be kind of a difficult one to say. Because I think we have is 19 burgers of hamburgers on the menu, along with 7 chicken burgers on the menu. And they range everywhere from sweet to savory, savory to spicy, and everything in between. It's very different. I've got different burgers. So the tequila burger, the reasoning with that, the banana has an umami flavor profile that acts and complements the beef. It brings out the flavor and the richness of it. So there's a very complementary idea with that. And I've got other burgers that kind of go with that. I've got the Raging Cajun, which I took a boudin sauce and the burger's basted in that. And it's got a lemon herb rice with Cajun shrimp on it with a remoulade. So things like that. As for where the inspiration, the ideas come for this, I have a whiteboard in the kitchen with about 200 different just random ingredients of things that I want to work with. And I have people who've stopped in, they give me an idea. It's like, hey, have you ever thought about this? Have you ever thought about using this? And I write it down. And from there, it's just kind of a match game. Just kind of match things together, figure out what I can come up with a new idea.
Is there a burger that you've come up with that was a surprise hit that you didn't think was going to be a surprise hit?
I mean, we've had some. So the biggest problem I have with it is some people, they kind of look at the ingredients and they go, it's like, no.
Right.
They just kind of automatically, and of course the tequila burger is very much that. People look, it's like, yeah, I'll take that, but I don't want the banana. I'm like, well, just give it a shot. Just give it a try. If you don't like it, I mean, we can take it off. I'll remake you a whole nother burger if that's what you want. My whole thing was to get people to try something they never would try anywhere else. I've had some, I'm trying to think what would be the most out there one that people have just really came across. And of course, I would think probably the one that that took me for a big shock, and that would probably be the Death Valley.
Oh my goodness.
That I knew was going to be popular. I knew certain people were going to like that. I didn't think it was going to be probably in my top 7 burgers on the menu.
It's fire.
I don't know if fire is the right word for that.
That's a double entendre.
So the Gates of Hell sauce is my homemade sauce that I make in house. It's 23 peppers, including Ghost, Scorpion, and Reaper, but with enough smoky and sweetness to kind of tone it down. That goes lightly toning down because it is still hotter than most people would want. But I would not believe how many people actually want that burger. I mean, that is a very spicy. That is made for people who want spice. But we have a lot of people who come in, they challenge their friends to try it. It's like, I bet you can't finish it. So they go back and forth with it. But that is a very popular burger. And of course, we sell it in jars also.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. You know, my daughter Adore, I think you've met her once or twice, where the other night, we're sitting at her grandparents' house, and she's eating ghost pepper potato chips. Just one after one after one. And she says, Drew Boo, try this. So I picked one up. I ate one. I sobbed. I openly wept. I was done. She ate the whole bag. She loves that stuff. And there's all kinds of people who do.
Yes.
Not faulting them at all. But here's what I want to know. Why on earth did you ever say to yourself, hey, listen, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take the hottest peppers I can possibly find, and I'm going to throw them together, and I'm going to destroy people.
Okay, so for that was quite a few years back. I had some friends that they loved spicy food, and they were always asking, "Is like, what's the hottest thing you can make? Just make me something really spicy." And of course, the thing with that is, I decided, I was like, okay, I know a lot of people like spice. And you can take those. I know people who can eat those peppers and just eat them straight. And they like it. I'm like, okay, well, the problem is at that point, all you taste is the heat. There's no flavor in it, really. It's just a lot of heat. So I was like, well, let me see. And I put it to him, a challenge to myself. I was like, let's take the 3 hottest natural peppers, combine them together, and then let's just try to make a good flavor. Because, and of course, that's one of the biggest things I've had a lot of people say. It's like, well, this is really, really good. It's really hot, but it's got a good flavor to it. And I was like, I wanted to make sure the flavor was in there. I didn't want it just to be straight heat because a lot of people can do that. And I will tell you, it was a lot of trials and tests to try to get that down. And of course, I don't like spicy, but I tasted it enough times at the very beginning, I won't touch it again.
No?
No, I don't. I do not try that. I have had my fair share of that, and I don't do much spicier than a habanero. So for that was extremely painful. But I was like, I'm not going to make something that I won't try myself. I don't care how bad it is. It's like, I'm going to at least have to try it.
Well, that's the chef's mindset, right?
It is.
You have to try it.
Yeah, I have to try it. I'm not going to serve something because if I don't know what it tastes like, how do I expect to try to write up a description on this, try to explain to someone, and then when they ask, it's like, what's the flavor of this? I can't do anything. I'm like, well, I've had other people tell me.
Right.
But they might not have that mindset of what flavors complement. And of course, everything that I make on the menu, everything has a reason that it's on there. I don't just throw things for filler. I don't throw things just like, well, I need to add more stuff to this. I go into a lot of science and research into the different flavors, components that kind of complement each other, and everything has a purpose on every single burger. Everything that goes into every sauce that is on the burger. Nothing is just thrown in there last minute.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
How much R&D do you do, and what's the process on the R&D when you're trying to? Here's why I ask. You mentioned earlier, I put the banana on the tequila burger because it's got a umami flavor profile that complements the beef. So clearly, you are skilled in culinary arts. You've had some education in this. What's your process in developing this kind of flavor palette for a particular burger?
So everything kind of goes together with it. Most of the time, I have an idea because there are certain flavors that correlate to each other. So one of my newest burgers that I brought out earlier this year was the Tiki Island. Of course, it has pineapple, it has coconut on there. I'm like, okay, those are two flavors that are very common. People know those two. They like those two together. So I was like, okay, I want to build something around this. So I was like, okay, so I can kind of go into like a spicier way of doing this, or I can kind of go into a sweeter way. And then I decided, I was like, well, I want to add a little bit extra sweetness to this. So brown sugar to the pineapple would add a good flavor to it. Kind of go with the teriyaki that's on the burger. So there's a lot of different things I'm looking at is because, like I said before, all my burgers range from sweet to savory to spicy. I have every aspect of what you can think of for a burger. I have something that complements that on the menu. So I have to kind of think, I was like, well, I have so many of these sweet burgers. I have so many spicy burgers. So I kind of have to figure out, it's like, because I can go both ways.
Right.
There's a possible way of going any direction I want to with any kind of ingredient. It's just kind of depending upon, and of course, the biggest thing is the people. I have to think about what are customers going to want. Because there's certain things that people kind of look at like, I don't know about that.
Right.
There's things that you put on there. Pineapple on a burger. They most of the time don't even read everything else. It's like, yeah, I want a pineapple on a burger. And so they just kind of go with that. And I'm like, well, it's not just that. If you're thinking that you're going to get a pineapple on a burger, then you're going to be surprised by what you get in that burger. So there's a lot of research and things that I do. And of course, I kind of always have to build around the acidities and stuff like that to try to figure out where I need to go.
We're going to get back to burgers here in just a few minutes.
Okay.
By the way, Gunslingin Burger is the place where Jeremy Haymes is operating out of. He is the proprietor. Hey, can you hit us with an address, phone number, ways to reach you real quick?
We are located at 713 East 4th Street in Russellville, Arkansas, directly across from Sonic and H&R Block. You can call us at 479-219-3517. We are open Monday through Saturday, 11 to 7:30 every day except for Tuesday. Close at 1:30.
So make sure to go by and see Jeremy every single day. Go buy all of the burgers. We're going to talk more about burgers here in just a few minutes, but there's a whole lot more to Jeremy Haymes than the chef side. The chef side. Although the chef side is a prominent side, probably the most prominent side.
Probably so.
It's clearly your passion.
Yes.
But you've got another passion. You spend some time in this studio about once a month or so.
Yes.
How'd you get hooked up with Game for Change?
So Game for Change. I've always had so my biggest things was food and music. Those are my two things growing up. I always wanted to do it. And I knew I wanted to either go into culinary, I wanted to go into like music production and lighting tech and stuff like that. I also have a degree, a background in theater and lighting and stuff like that as well. So that was kind of my thing. Of course, I had the studio. I have a home studio I record out of. I've done some recording for some video games and musicians. So I've kind of had that. And then I've been good friends with Matt since I met him. We started working together back in 2014.
Yeah.
And of course he left, and I've always stayed with him. We were good friends. And then he kind of had this thing about Game for Change, his idea for it. And I was coming back. I'm not going to spoil it. You know where I was coming back from Little Rock.
Yeah.
I'm not going to spoil that because I know you want to talk about
we're
that
talking
later.
about that in a second.
So
yeah.
I'm not going to say that for where I was coming back from. And I had just posted a picture that day of the new studio setup. I had my full studio set up. And he had saw it, and he asked me on that, he's like, how much would you charge for doing some recording? And I'm like, well, I mean, you're a good friend. I was like, oh, we'll work something. He's like, well, let's meet up tomorrow because I've got a proposition for you. And so we met up the following day, and he told me of what he wanted. And I'm like, okay, I like this. I like this idea. I like where you're going with this. It's like, I'll help you out. And of course, that was on Wednesday. That first show was the following week.
And we need to clarify, too, if you're not familiar with Game for Change, Matt Ketchum is the host of Game for Change. It's a show that airs, I think, between 8 and 10 times every single year. It's shot right here in this studio, but you can find it at Game, the number 4, Change. And basically what the show is it highlights nonprofits in the area, interviewing folks who represent those nonprofits while they're playing video games.
Yes.
Okay, it's Wednesday.
Okay, sorry. So that was Wednesday, and we talked. I was like, okay, I like this. It was that following week you guys had the show. And I watched the show live on Facebook, or Twitch at that time. And, yeah, it was, there was a lot of...
Content was good.
The content was great.
It was not, the first 2 seasons were not shot in this studio.
No. No, there was some... very much audio issues with that first one. And of course I kind of looked, I was like, okay, and I talked to him afterwards. I'm like, okay, here's what we have. It's like, I've got microphones, I've got the mixer. It's like, we're going to run everything through it. I'm like, we're going to get this sounding great. We'll give everyone headsets. It's like, we're going to sound great. And of course we went through that second show, and big difference in audio wise. It was a lot easier to hear because the first one was, yes, it was great content, but you have to get past the fact of all of that echoing and just bellowing down on it. But if you get past that, yeah, it's a great show. But
Grandma's Couch Pants.
Oh man,
came out of that show, yeah.
Yep. Matt was talking the other day, when he was in here a couple days ago. Becky Lynch. His son.
Yeah, mentioned that very same thing. Yeah,
Yep.
when Matt was in here, yeah.
So, but no, it kind of went from there, and from that point, I joined the second show, and yeah, it's just I've been with them ever since, and it is one of my passions with it is I love to help out in the community.
You're very community focused, as you just mentioned. You are people focused. You have a heart for ministry.
Yes.
And this transitions really well into something that I did not know about you. Now, we could tell my backstory for you, but you can go back to the Game for Change archives for that. Your 18th birthday,
yes,
was spent in a very strange place. And in order for me to set this story up, the way that Jeremy told me was, I'm going to look directly into this camera for dramatic effect. Drew, my 18th birthday was spent in prison. Go.
So I got to foresay with that. That was always my dream. It was my dream for like 4 years that I'm going to spend my 18th birthday in prison. And it just so happened to fall perfectly on my 18th birthday. So I got started in prison ministry at the age of 14. I went with my church, our youth group, and we went down to the women's unit in Pine Bluff. I went one time, loved it so much. Just the church service that went on in that prison was unlike any other service I'd ever been to. And so that point, I was like, hey, no, it's like, I like this. And they're like, oh, well, we come every month. I'm like, okay, we're going again. It was like, at 14, I was spending once a month inside the Pine Bluff Women's Unit. And from there, we went up to 2 times a month. So I spent a lot of time growing up into that. But my biggest thing was the motorcycle ministry that I was a part of at the time was going into Tucker Prison. Tucker is a higher level security. You have to be 18 in order to go in there. You can't be under 18. So of course that was one of my biggest things. I was like, man, I want to go in there. I want to go in there. And finally, it kind of came up to it, and my birthday fell on the perfect time. And the leader, he's like, okay, I'm going to give it to you. It's like, we're going to go in on your 18th birthday. So I had to go down, get my ID ahead of time before I even turned 18 in order for me to get down there. And yeah, I spent at 7 o'clock that morning, I went into Tucker Prison on my 18th birthday.
I've known a lot of ministers in my life, and you know they range in calling from kids ministry to misfit ministries, that kind of thing. It is a special calling to go into a prison.
Yes.
Walk me through that as much as you can.
Okay. So yes, you're very correct in that format. It is not for everyone. I've heard people that say it's like, yeah, I kind of would like to do that. I'm like, don't do it unless you know that's what you want to do. I was like, it's not for the faint of heart, because it is a very different aspect. The first moment you get locked behind those doors, those gates, you lose everything of your ability. You are no longer a civilian. You are treated, if anything goes wrong in there, you are treated as a resident. There is no difference in that whatsoever. And kind of going into that, I have been inside of unit doing a service when there was a riot that happened, and we went into total lockdown. And so at that point, yeah, it's you listen to the guards and you stay in line. It's very different, but like I said, I hate to say it, but the best church services I've ever been at have been behind bars.
Do you attribute that to the fact that a lot of these people, most of these people who are in prison, are very likely at the lowest point of their lives? This is what they've got.
A lot of it is. And of course, that was kind of my biggest, our calling for the ministry that we had, which our ministry was Born to Raise Hell. Of course, is a lot of churches didn't like us for the reason of, and of course, raise is RAZE, to tear down, to destroy, to demolish.
Right.
But they kind of looked as like, you're not a church service at Born to Raise Hell.
Right.
So it didn't work good for churches, but for prison, it was a whole nother game, because people would come in, they would see the name on there, and they're like, oh, well, hold on, Born to Raise Hell. It's like, oh yeah, I'm a hell raiser. I'm going to do this. So they'll just show up, and that's all it was. That's all we needed was to get people in. And of course, we did things kind of different. We weren't expecting, because you can't go into a prison expecting to have a standard church service.
Right.
It's not going to work. So of course, our things is, it's very loud. We are rowdy. We want to make sure to show them that, church, that God, being a Christian, can be fun, that it's not just a boring lifestyle sitting in there. So that was kind of our whole aspect of that. And of course, it was to encourage people to keep pushing forward.
Right.
That was our biggest thing, because a lot of times in there, they don't have people, their family cuts all ties with them. They lose everything. No one talks to them. No one calls them. Their family that they said, it's like, yeah, we'll write you. We'll come down and see you. And yeah, it might show up a couple times and then it stops.
Right.
So at that point, a lot of them, they're on their own. They don't have anything else going on except for what's in that unit. And of course, we even got to the point that what we would do is, because we were limited to 1 hour services. So what we would do is we would have our service and we would hand out prayer request cards just for people. It's like, fill this out. And on the bottom, write down your name, your ID number, because you have to have their ID number and stuff.
Right.
And it's like, we know the address, just write that down. And if you want to, you fill that out, we will write you a card back, a handwritten card, just mail it back to you. And we did that, and that took off. We were sending out about upwards to 150 cards a month of sending out to them. And of course, some people, they had never received a card whatsoever. We were the only ones they would ever receive a card from. So it was at that point that we were hitting them in a different location. It wasn't just that we were going down there, we were preaching, and we leave and we left. Because we've been in prison ministry since I was 14.
Right.
And we noticed that it's like that's all that a lot of people did. It's like we didn't want that. We wanted them to be basically family. We wanted them to know it's like, hey, no, we're here for you every step of the way.
Right.
We're not just going to come down here, forget about you once we leave out. And of course, we would read the prayer request, pray over them, and then write them a card. So we would know what they're talking about. So we would come back in, see their name. It's like, hey, you asked prayers for your wife or your daughter and stuff and like that. I'm like, yeah, we did, and stuff like that. And they were like, you actually remember that? And I'm like, well, that's our job. That's what we're doing here. It's like this is much more than just a church service. This is a ministry.
You know, and there's an interesting parallel too. People who are really, really good in ministry, I've also found, are very, very good in service industries.
Yes.
Because the two are very, very similar.
Yes, they go hand in hand.
They really do. You think in a service industry, you know, well, you know what? I'll say this, and I hope I don't make anybody mad, but the service industry and the church industry, as it were, can sometimes get very cookie cutter. You bring people in,
Yep.
they receive what it is that they came to receive, and then they go back out the door. Whereas good hospitality in a restaurant setting sets you apart from other restaurants.
Yes.
The way you are treated in the church side changes the way that you perceive what church looks like.
Yes.
So especially when you're in a place like a maximum security prison,
Yep.
being treated like a human being probably has a dramatic impact on these people.
Yes, it does. And of course, that was the thing so much about it is you have to look past the fact that it's like when I don't go in there, I'm not looking at them as a resident, as a person with a criminal background. I'm not questioning, it's like, well, what are they in here for? Or things like that. It's like, I'm going in there, it's like, these are other people. I'm going in as a church service. I'm not questioning, I'm not thinking about anyone else. I'm just going in there and like, these are still humans.
Right.
These are people right here. They have families. Yes, okay, they might have got caught up in the wrong lifestyle. They might have done something wrong. But which of us have not done something wrong in our life?
He who is without sin comes to mind. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, so at that point, it's like, who am I to judge what they've done? It's like, I'm here. I was like, I want to show them that they're loved, because if God can love us, if Jesus can love us in anything that we do, there's no different from them. And one of my biggest things I always did a lot of preaching about was Saul. One of my Saul and Paul. That is one of my favorite stories, because you got to think about it. Is like you have to think about before who Saul was beforehand. Saul was someone who just kind of he killed Christians. That was his main thing. So you have that point, and then so he has on his trip, he has a life-altering decision that changes every aspect of him.
So much so it changes his name.
Yes. But then at that point, you have to then think about he's going out and preaching and writing letters to the Christians about what he originally killed. And you have to then look at it as like, how do those people perceive him?
Right.
Because what he's now talking to them about, he used to kill them for. So it's like at that point, you kind of have to think about it. It's like if God can love Saul so much that he wrote most of the New Testament, I mean, how much more can he love someone who's done something else?
Who has quite literally not murdered a Christian.
Yes.
Right.
So, I mean, it wasn't a complete Christian genocide, because that's pretty much what he was.
Yeah.
So at that point, it's like, that's kind of the thing, is like, I tell him, it's like God loves you. There's nothing that you can do that he doesn't love you. So it kind of at that point is like, you kind of learn who they are, and they kind of look at it differently.
We were talking to Jeremy Haymes of the Gunslingin Burger. We are almost out of time. Jeremy, hit them with that address, and let's talk about your best burgers. What does everybody need to come in and try?
All right. You can reach us at 713 East 4th Street, directly across from Sonic and H&R Block. Open Monday through Saturday. Best burger they need to try.
My money is the Jack's Ranch, but
Jack's Ranch.
that's always been my favorite.
That's the #1 selling burger.
Is it? That's my favorite one. It's awesome.
I would have to say probably to get someone to get an aspect to grasp everything that what's going on at there, I would have to say the Butch and Sundance.
Ah, is that the one with the egg?
No, that's
No.
Into the Sunset. Butch and Sundance is the half and half burger. That is one of my specialty creations. I had talked to a lot of my chef friends and asking them, and no one had ever seen anything like this. But it is one of the side of the burger is completely spicy, the other side's completely sweet. So with the burger, you have 3 different flavor profiles. One is a spicy burger, the other side is a sweet burger, and then in the middle you have a cross that fluctuates between it's a sweet and spicy burger. So that's the one I would say to kind of get you an idea of what's going on with the menu.
It is a gourmet burger place. It's not your mama's burger shack.
No.
It's a great place, and for my money, Alathus may not endorse this. This is not the official opinion of Alathus, but I can look right into the camera and say the Gunslingin Burger is the best burger in town, and you need to go and see them. Jeremy, it's been a pleasure, my friend. When are you going to do this again? Let's do it again.
Yes, we will.
All right, and I'll see you for Game for Change here in the next couple of weeks. It's Jeremy Haymes right there. I'm Drew Brent. Thanks so much for joining us here today on The Spotlight. Remember, if you're in the market to buy or sell your home, give us a call today, 479-968-5668. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.